We made it through the regular season. We're now to conference championship weekend. It starts on Friday night, but last Saturday, I ended up 5-3 on my picks, which brings me to 57-52, which is plus 5 units on the year. You went 3-3 and you're sitting at 56-41, so plus 15 units on the year.
Yeah, break even a week for me. That means if you wrote all my picks on BroThrow, you did not lose any money thanks to the plus 100 VIG on every single bet.
That always helps. Well, this week we'll try and get it going again, and it starts with Washington, Oregon. The line is now moved to Washington plus 9.5. Based on your picks in the past, I'm going to say you're picking Washington.
You know, I hope to not be so predictable in future picks, but spoiler alert, I might be. Yes, I am on Washington in this game. It just feels like way too many points to give to Michael Penix Jr. Part of this, I think, is based on how these two teams have looked in recent form. Washington over the last 3 weeks barely won each of those 3 games. And Oregon, ever since they lost to Washington, has really cruised. They've won every single game by multiple possessions. The only one that was even not more than 10 points was against USC, where they won by 9 after USC got the last 2 touchdowns of the game in garbage time. Didn't really mean too much against Oregon's backups. Having said that, I still like Washington in this game because I think their season has gone very tactically. I know a lot of us, myself included, expected Washington to just bomb the ball every single play, just chuck it down the field, way more yards and points that they've actually put up. That's not how the season's gone. They've run the ball more. They've leaned a little bit on the defense. They still do bomb the ball down the field, but that type of offense is very high risk, high reward. So sometimes it doesn't really pan out. It did in the first game against Oregon. It came down to the last possession won, and that's exactly what happened. I think it's going to happen again. I like Washington plus the points, and I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on the money line. I see no reason why, except people are saying it's tough to beat a team twice in one season. Well, guess what? Penix has beat Bo Nix back-to-back, and it's going to happen time number 3.
I totally understand where people are coming from when they talk about that back-to-back win in a single season. As a Nebraska fan, I remember back in 2010, they played Washington. They beat them down the first time on the road. They get to the Holiday Bowl, and then they get beat. So I've seen it happen before as a fan of my own team. But this line is sketchy. 10 points for a Washington team who's undefeated, who already beat Oregon. They're going to play in a controlled environment playing in Vegas. It does not make sense. And my pick here starts at the line. Oregon's got one of the best O-lines statistically in the nation, and Washington, on the other side, their D-line ranks dead last in multiple categories. A prime example that I pulled was Oregon ranks number 1 in sacks allowed, and Washington ranks in the bottom 20 in total sacks. At some point, I think that Oregon's ground game is going to take over, and if they can get a 7 or even a 3-point lead, they're going to be able to sustain those long drives, and they'll be able to finish with points. And if they can finish with points and hold Washington 1 or maybe 2 times, I think they'll be able to win, even if this one does turn up to be a shootout, just like the total at 66.5 is saying it might be. Now, we knew after the first time that these two teams played that Oregon was going to be the favorite in the rematch, but 10 points is just insane to me. So I think Vegas knows something that we don't. I think Vegas knows that Oregon has the better team overall at this point in the season, maybe less banged up, maybe a little bit more momentum. Who knows what it is, but I'm going to take Oregon minus 9.5, and I'm going to take Bo Nix to finish his revenge tour with a playoff berth and a Heisman Trophy. Next is Alabama, Georgia for the SEC championship game. The line is now moved from 55.5 to 6. The total from 54 to 55. Jake, did you know in the last 3 SEC championships that Bama scored 52 and 41? And Georgia scored 24 and 50. And then 3 of Georgia's last 4 games went under 54, which I think is why this line is so low. But they did play offenses that can't get it going the way that I think Bama's going to. Milroe's getting better as the season goes on, and there's an argument that if he wins this game, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And they only need to score 28 for me to feel good about hitting the over. And the only time they went under, which I think happened 5 times this year, were all before mid-October. So I'm going to expect creativity from Nick Saban. I'm going to expect a hurry-up mentality to get points up on the board, since he's going to know Georgia can score on any given play, since they've got a really dominant run game and some really threatening receivers.
Nick Saban's second year at Alabama, he made it to the SEC championship game and lost to Tim Tebow. Since then, he is 8-0 in SEC championship games, 8-1 record overall. He is also 28-2 against his former assistants, of which Kirby Smart is one. Let's not forget, the last time these two teams played in the SEC championship game, Nick Saban did the unthinkable, benching his starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts, for Tua Tagovailoa, which led to the comeback victory in this game. Giving me 6 points with Nick Saban in the SEC championship game? Sign me up all day.
Yep, I'm riding the 6 with you. I like that. Over in 6. Next is the Big Ten championship game. Iowa plays Michigan. The total is what you're on, and it's moved from 35.5 down to 35.
Yeah, Iowa's defense, as we've said every single week on this show, just one of the best units in the entire country. And their offense, one of the worst in the entire country. So it's a perfect combination for unders. Iowa's only given up 3 touchdowns in the last 6 games. They're playing really on fire right now. Michigan, we've seen Wander Sharon Moore have gone to a super conservative play style. Lots of runs, lots of punts, field goals. They're just trying to win the game and not do too much. We know that Iowa is not going to score very many points at all. Their over-under for the first half and for the second half on DraftKings is 0.5. That means any single score, you hit that bet. And I don't really think they're going to hit that bet. I put them to score 3-7 at the max, only 1 score in this game. Their offense has just been so atrocious, and Michigan's D is so good and so locked in. I think there's a chance Iowa doesn't even cross midfield on offense. Michigan, for their part, they certainly could hit this over by themselves, but I think they're going to go super conservative in the second half, especially if they have the lead. There's absolutely no reason for them to go for any trick plays or put any sort of concepts and schemes on film. I think it's going to be a walk in the park for them, not necessarily in terms of the physicality of the game, because Iowa's going to bring it and try super hard. But I don't really see this game being competitive in the slightest. So I think Michigan's going to take this like 23-3. Definitely going with the under on this one.
We've had 12 Big Ten title games. Can you tell me how many went under 35?
I don't know, 0.
2. 2015 against Michigan State. It was Iowa against Michigan State, 16-13. And then 2020 was Ohio State against Northwestern, 22-10. Michigan scored 40 plus themselves the last 2 years on Iowa and Purdue. And Michigan played 4 defenses ranked inside the top 20 this year. And they scored 31 on Rutgers, 45 on Nebraska, 24 on Penn State, and 30 on Ohio State. So even if Iowa only scores 7, you only need 28 from Michigan. I'm going to take the over because I think Iowa's going to come out and they know they have to score points if they're going to have any chance to win this game. Next is Louisville and Florida State for the ACC championship game. Florida State is the favorite. You wouldn't have thought Jeff Brom was going to have a top 25 defense in year 1, but here we are. I think they actually rank 18th or 19th nationally. Their offense is solid too, though, and they score 33 points a game, but the defense does enough every week to get turnovers and just gives them more opportunities. Now, last week it was a disaster. They did have slim playoff hopes, but they dropped the ball at home to Kentucky. But it was rivalry week, and it could have just as easily happened to Florida State if Florida was halfway competent. Now you've got Florida State, who's less than a 3-point favorite, even though their QB did enough to beat Florida on the road last week. So this line is telling me something. Louisville's way ahead of schedule in terms of the rebuild, and if they did end up winning 11 games in year 1 and they went to a New Year's 6 game, it would be an incredible feat. So they're plenty motivated, even though they lost last week. I just don't trust that Florida State has the game-changing QB who can make a play when they need it the most. So I'm going to ride with the coach I trust, which is Jeff Brom, who was able to go to the Big Ten championship last year and now the ACC championship this year.
I was absolutely shocked to see Florida State favored in this game, especially given that it is at a neutral site, which would take any home field advantage out of the picture. And I really think it's only because of Louisville's loss last week to Kentucky. And that loss, while it was devastating for me because I had them in several moneyline parlays of the only losing leg, was kind of a fluke loss. They gave up a kick return touchdown and multiple fumbles across midfield, and they only lose that game by 7 points when they had the ball, driving with a chance to tie it at the end of the game. This Florida State QB is, he looked okay. I just don't know if he's going to have the balls to get a game-winning drive if it comes down to it at the end. I think if Florida State can get out to an early lead, they got a great shot, but I just don't know if that can happen, and I'm riding Louisville as well.
Next is the MAC championship game, Miami, Ohio, and Toledo. The line has moved from 7.5 to 8.
Yeah, they played earlier this season, and Toledo only won by 4. But that was a game where Miami starting quarterback Brett Gabbert, Blaine Gabbert's brother, got injured and is now out for the season. Once he got injured in that game, Miami only put up 44 yards the rest of the game. Toledo's defense has been absolutely nasty, and it's bolstered by one of the best run games in college football, let alone the MAC. Penny Boone is an awesome running back, almost 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns already this season. I just think they got a solid run game, defensive team. They've just got a great game plan. I think they're too strong, too tough, too physical for Miami. And I like them to cover with ease in this game.
It's a low total at 44. And if you're going to say this one's going to be a close game like that, winning by 8 is a lot to cover. So I'm going to say Miami takes it with the +8. I'm going to take the points here because this is the second time they've played. And although they don't have their quarterback, I think they're going to find another way to try and score on them. And Toledo should win, but maybe they win by a touchdown. Last is New Mexico State at Liberty for the Conference USA Championship game. Now, this has moved from 10.5 to 11. New Mexico State already lost to Liberty once, and Liberty gets home field advantage, so it feels a little bit sketch. But I think New Mexico State's going to make adjustments. You don't beat Auburn on the road without a good game plan, without really good coaching. And I'm going to say when they went back to Jacksonville State, they weren't a slouch either. So because that wasn't an easy task and they were able to get it done, they have now caught momentum. They have done the impossible 2 weeks in a row. And now they've got to go on the road to Liberty, where everyone thinks they're going to lose this one. They're going to compete. They've got a good coaching staff. Although Liberty's undefeated, I just don't think they're going to be able to cover more than a touchdown and a field goal. So give me New Mexico State with 11.
Mexico State has one of the oldest head coaches in the entire country, Jerry Kill. He's spent the majority of his career as the head coach for Minnesota in the Big Ten. He brings a ton of big game, big conference experience. I think he's going to have his guys ready to go, motivated, and have a great game plan. I agree with you. I like Liberty, but 10.5, 11, too many points here.
Well, if you want to take any of these bets that we talked about today, or if you want to bet on NFL or any other games that we didn't cover, you can click the description box below and sign up for BroThrow at brothrow.com/YouTube. The spreads and the totals are plus 100 odds, meaning if you bet 50, you'll win 50. The money lines are better odds than you'll find on any of the apps or any of the sports books you play on. Jake and I bet on BroThrow every week. We've been saving a ton of money on the juice, and you can join us there just by clicking that link in the description. But Jake, this is our final week before we get to bowl season, so hopefully we can finish with a positive record. Well, you're going to finish with a positive record. Hopefully I can protect mine, and we'll get some momentum going into bowl season.
Excited for the conference championship weeks. Very excited for the bowl season. We got to enjoy these last few games while we're still got college football.
Yeah, I'll see you in the next one.